Okay, here we got part 2 of organizational theory. So, absolutely, that classic organizational theory is the starting point. But contingency theories, and I'm always a fan of contingency theories because I refuse to believe that there's ever one best solution for all situations. So the contingency theories literally says the best way to organize your organization depends on situation. Okay? So Woodward argued that there's 3 specific types of organizations: small batch organizations where you produce one product at a time. From beginning to end, you create a product, then you start over. Beginning to end, create a project, start over. Okay? Large batch or mass production organizations are like assembly line operations. So you're going to produce a large number of units, but the units are discrete. And then a third type is a continuous process organization, and that is where the output or the product is something like a distillery, like liquor or something like that. And so it's a flowing process. Though you're creating a lot of output, they're not discrete units. Okay, it's a continuous process, and depending on the type of organization you have, will depend on things such as span of control. Okay, so all kinds of things will change depending on the type of organization. Another notion of this is mechanistic versus organic organizations. So organizations that are in stable environments tend to be mechanistic. So they have rules and regulations. They're kind of like bureaucracy, but they have a smaller span of control. Whereas organic organizations tend to arise in more less stable, rapidly changing environments. Whether that be, technologically, we're in an era where we're in a very rapid change for technology. So any technology is probably going to be organic. But what's very mechanistic? Laundry detergent, okay? Because it's just like, it doesn't really change all that much, okay? So we could see some ideas here. Human relations theory, on the other hand, it arose out of classical organizational theory because human beings are human beings. They are not bolts. All right, you can't treat them like tools, and you can treat your screwdriver and use your screwdriver, just drive screws and then put it on the rack and ignore it. Okay, you can't do that with a human worker. You can't ignore them. So human workers were having incredibly boring, unchallenging jobs, which was impacting productivity. Okay, so human relations theory argues that the main thing that influences an organization is the beliefs that managers have. Okay, and there's basically 2 beliefs that a manager can hold in an organization: Theory X and Theory Y. Why he called this, I don't know, but that's what it was. Theory X: a manager who carries Theory X will look at employees as lazy, that they don't want to work, they are low in intelligence, that's who they are. And your job is to make them do what they don't want to do. Okay? A Theory Y manager, on the other hand, says employees are inherently good. The idea is management's job is to simply provide opportunities for their growth so that they can express their fundamental goodness. Okay, and so what you find is that these management styles can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So somebody that has a Theory X style, they just assume employees are lazy, they treat them with rigid control, they do not show them respect, they respond poorly because they're being treated poorly, and that confirms what the management thought in the first place, right? Management and a Theory Y assumes that employees are inherently good, they treat their employees well with dignity and respect, they respond positively to this treatment, and therefore confirm what the manager believed. So, pretty interesting thing right there, eh? So you can see here that Theory X versus Theory Y, though it starts up at the top, management is responsible for the economic well-being of the organization, it all changes from the way all the way down. Okay, every single step of the organization changes as a result of these different ways of thinking. right? Systems theory of organization argues that any attempt to think about organizational structure or organizational efficiency without considering the larger system in which your organization exists. That is, your organization is running, but government regulations are impacting your organization. Suppliers are impacting your organization. Trade agreements, okay? National culture, absolutely. Customers, yes, customers are driving your organization. Your competition, all right? Shareholders, and I don't even know what this last one is because it's under that little competition. Well, there you go. I thought I just said that. Okay. Sorry about that, but that's what happens when I'm never did it anyway. All right, moving on. All right. So here's a notion of one of the ideas behind systems theory is that an organization will change with time. All right, it will change. Obviously because of the interactions. I mean, an organization is a function of government regulations, right? But what's going to happen is that there's going to be inputs, transformations, and outputs. Okay. So what does the organization need to do its things? Okay. So it needs raw materials, human resources, energy, machinery, etc. Then the job of the organization is to transform those inputs. Okay. Take the raw materials, use the human resources, put them together, create a product. Okay. Whether it be production, service, or training, I don't know what you're going to be producing. Okay. And then the outputs could be products, services, or knowledge. Okay? Now, the products, services, and knowledges then feed back and influence the input. So, as an interesting example with Apple, so the inputs would be plastics and alloys and chips and labor and capital, all these things. They'll transform them into an iPhone, okay? Now, this is a key, is that the transformation of the inputs must add value. So the cost of the inputs and the cost of the value of the outputs needs to have this reflection. And so the output, the iPhone sells the iPhone to you and I, and the output creates more capital, right, so that you can have more input, all right? And so it's a cycle that's supposed to be increasing, okay? But at the same time, the iPhone does not live in a world on its own, right? Without a wireless carrier, your iPhone is kind of not all that valuable to you, okay? So you must connect it to a wireless carrier, and therefore the value of both systems, the internet carrier systems, wireless carrier systems rather, and the Apple system are then increased in value. But certain elements of an open system is this notion of negative entropy, okay? That the continuing input, this is actually a very interesting, comes more from physics, actually. This is a physics thing. That all systems, though the power feeds back, or the outputs feed back into the inputs and etc., all systems with energy are destined to die. All right, that's kind of what entropy means. And I don't do no physics, but it's like if the sun gives energy to the earth, and it's a continuous cycle, and eventually the sun will die. I guess it was more sophisticated than that, but. Anyway, all right, so important characteristics of open systems.